What's going on, folks? Nate here at Tool Dynaworks, and today I am working on a really pretty ZX10R. And this 2023 ZX10 is done right. The customer has already installed an SC Project 3/4 exhaust system. He got a screaming deal on some BST carbon wheels, and he replaced the stock ugly taillights and fender with a fender eliminator kit and a TST integrated turn signal and taillight. We're gonna take care of the rest for him. So on these bikes, step one of this process is pull a bunch of plastics because you need to get the tank off. These side covers, pull those covers off the rear, pull the seat, pull this guy to actually get access to the seat, and pull the front of the tank cover off. As you do all that, you'll actually have access to remove the tank itself, which I've got just chilling down here on this nice handy tire. If that's done, you're gonna go ahead and pull off the air box. Gotta get to the air injection system underneath this guy, and I will show you how to pull it. Do a favor, grab a drill, or an impact, whatever, with a Phillips bit on the end of it, and work your way around the periphery and just start taking these guys out of the airbox. And once you get pissed off because you can't figure out why it won't come off, realize that there's one of these guys right in the center, and undo that one. So once you get that off, you are going to be looking at, except you'll have velocity stacks I've already removed here, and then to get the rest of the airbox off, you're going to need to pull and loosen these bolts right down in there. My camera won't really focus on it properly, but there's one there and one there that essentially act as clamps onto the rubber boots underneath the airbox. You're also going to want to pull off the bracket here, and then you can get access to this last front bolt to lift the rest of the airbox base apart. You also have some hoses you got to pull off to actually remove the rest of the airbox base. One of those hoses is the air injection solenoid. Now the air injection solenoid tees right between those two ports there. These are the air injection ports on top of the valve cover. And when you get to this point, you have a choice to make. This is not normally already exposed. It looks like this guy here. On every bike we build for the track or for any sort of off-road use, I will say, to be politically correct, I remove this entire section of rubber. It covers the entire top of the engine and the valve cover and makes accessing anything kind of a pain in the ass. So normally, if this was my bike, what I would do is unplug all these coils, go ahead and don't even worry about cutting out around for the air injection system. I would start back here and cut underneath there, here and here, pull this up, and then just rip the whole thing out. You can be a little more surgical about it if you want to, but ultimately, once this rubber is out of the way, working on this bike becomes massively easier. That rubber is essentially in place in just about every modern motorcycle, at least every inline 4. It is there almost entirely for noise emissions, which I personally don't give two shits about. If you care, then just cut around the block-off plates, where the block-off plates will be around these air injection ports. Pull this screw here, this one back there, same on the other side, install your block-off plates, and Bob's your uncle. Once you've got all that done, you should have something looking like this. Assuming that you left the rubber in place, which I'm going to do because, again, this is a customer bike, not mine. Once that's done, just get the airbox back on. Make sure that you plug the port on the bottom of the airbox where the air injection solenoid was originally coming off of. We just use a big old vacuum cap, and we'll go ahead and zip tie around that just to keep it secure and from ever coming off. But if you do not cap that off, you've got a nice big old air leak past the filter right into the throttle bodies. More observant of you have probably noticed, or anybody that's done this already, there's no velocity stacks still in the airbox, and you'll actually need to pull the velocity stacks to get the airbox off in the first place. Well, it's because we're replacing the stock stacks with these. The stacks here in the front are the stock velocity stacks on a 2019 and newer ZX10. The stacks in the rear, which are the ones going in the bike, are actually from the 2016, 17, and 18 models. The older generation stacks are actually shorter than the newer ones. Now, the design that Kawasaki has here on the newer ones does provide a little bit more mid-range torque, having the slightly taller center stacks and a little bit more shaped outer stacks. However, the shorter stacks provide a little bit more airflow at the top end of the RPM range. It also creates a little bit more linear power curve. And when we're working on something like a 2020 plus ZX10, we want to see 200 or as near 200 horsepower to the tire as we can possibly get. So we want that little bit of extra airflow at the top end, and we are more than willing to sacrifice just a little bit of mid-range torque to get there. Back in 2019, when these bikes came out, Nels actually did a tremendous amount of velocity stack testing. We bought stacks from every aftermarket manufacturer we could possibly find at the time. And hilariously enough, the older generation, I shouldn't say older generation, the earlier of the 5th generation, the 2016, 17, and 18 stacks, actually worked better than the aftermarket alternatives that were out there for the 2019 Plus airboxes. These are what we're sticking with. I'm not going to show you how to put it all back together, because if you got it all apart, you can figure out the rest yourself. But I will show you the quick 3 critical things that need to be addressed while you do have this apart before you button it all back up. As with any of these modern Kawasaki's, the O2 sensor needs to get unplugged. The O2 sensor is just sitting right here. Unplug it, leave it sitting there. You don't need to put anything in the connector. You're good to go. And make sure that you plug this guy off, and we're going to, again, put a zip tie around there, make sure it never comes loose. And lastly, we're going to rip out the X-Up servo. It does no longer need to be there, so while the bike's apart, we're just going to go ahead and take it out for this customer. He had left the cables just kind of dangling there, knowing that we would clean it up for him. Here they are, just kind of floating out in space. And we eliminate the fault codes for all 3 of those systems. So yank them all out. Now I'll show you what these things do when they are assembled like this, but have a bone stock mapping in place, because it's funny. With the 2016 airbox in place, the SE Project Cat Delete and slip-on, no O2 sensor, air injection system blocked off, and the X-Up servo removed, the thing is lean as hell pretty much everywhere, and it makes 171.5 horsepower and 77 foot-pounds of torque. And the power completely falls on its face after 12,000 RPMs. But as I said before, with our custom mapping in place, these are 200 horsepower motorcycles, and they're set up with those velocity stacks and a 3/4 exhaust system. And I wasn't lying. After a bunch of break-in miles on the dyno, because this thing was brand spanking new, the final power figures with our flash in place and perfectly flat air fuel is 199.3 and 84.7 foot-pounds of torque. Now, 13,000 RPMs after the power started falling off with the stock mapping in place, that is a 65 horsepower gain from some velocity stacks, a 3/4 exhaust system, and an ECU flash. Now, I'll be honest with you, this is not quite how I would set up mine. I'm not an enormous fan of the SE Project exhaust system. They tend to perform a few horsepower less than the other 3/4 or Cat Delete slip-on systems that are out there. I personally would put a Graves or Hindle on these because in all of our testing, they seem to do a little bit better. So if we had one of those in place and not the enormously heavy Road 6 tires that the dealership chose to put on here, because again, those are not the tires for a 200 horsepower superbike, we would actually see probably closer to 203, 204, 205 horsepower to the tire on pump gas. But regardless of what exhaust you have on your ZX10, I can almost guarantee that we have custom mapping built for it on the dyno, if not tested and proven on the track like most of the systems we recommend have been. We have flashed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of 5th and 6th gen ZX10s now, so if you'd like to get yours dialed in, ECU flash is on the website for $325. If you'd like custom dyno tuning done for it, give us a call, shoot us an email, support@tooldynoworks.com. We're always happy to help.